Hello and welcome to the Tough Cover Podcast. After a 10-day layoff since April 23rd, I am your host, Mark Henry Jr., and we are back, baby. It is Tuesday, May 4th, and may the 4th be with you. You can follow me at Mark Henry Jr. _ and you can follow the podcast at Tough Cover Pod on Twitter. You can also follow at The Painted Lines all on Twitter, and you can subscribe to The Painted Lines on YouTube and Twitch. On today's show, we will be going over and breaking down my top 5 favorite and least favorite draft classes of the NFL draft in 2021. And then after that, we will get back to our usual daily picks gambling show where I break down the slate for tonight and give you my breakdown for my record in so far March and April. Since we are heading into our third month here on the Tough Cover Podcast on the Painted Lines, and it has been a smashing success so far. But first, before we get into all of that, here is a quick word from our sponsors, XL Media over at BetRivers.
Hey, what's up, guys? MLB baseball is in full swing. The NBA and NHL playoffs are right around the corner, and the NFL season is mere moments away. While we here at the Painted Lines are devoted to bringing you top-notch content from all the major sports, we are excited to also now give you the opportunity to cash in on all that content and knowledge. If you follow the link below, you will have the opportunity to sign up with BetRivers, an online sportsbook, and get an instant new user deposit match of up to $250. That's free money that you can use and try to turn into more free money. Let's go. Don't sit there and waste all that money. Turn every basket into an otherwise meaningless Cavs-Timberwolves matchup in on a random Wednesday in March. That makes it all the more exciting. For betting tips and advice, be sure to check out written content from our top prognosticator, Money Max, on our website at thepaintedlines.com, or check out the Tough Cover Podcast right here on the Painted Lines YouTube channel. You've seen the commercials all over TV and radio, but now is the time. Sign up today with BetRivers using the link below and start cashing in on your love for sports. Using the link below will automatically inform BetRivers that TPL sent you, and you'll get that new user deposit match of up to $250. Don't miss out on this opportunity for some free money, baby.
Don't miss out on that opportunity, and you can take the picks that I'll give you later on in the show, and you can put them right into BetRivers, and that is the best way to watch the Tough Cover Podcast and to play along out there in the audience. So I'm going to start with the good and then get to the bad. I'm going to do the NFL draft. I'm going to start with my 5 favorite drafts and then my 5 least favorite drafts. I wasn't able to be on the NFL draft show last night. That was more of an Eagle show anyway, so this is going to be a bit more NFL-based around the league. And then I'm also going to get to my picks once I'm done that. So let's start it out with the Philadelphia Eagles, who I give an A- to. When I'm talking about these picks, the early picks are really what I'm going to place a lot of emphasis on, because I think rounds 4 through 7 are really dark throws. There are obviously guys I like a lot and picks that I like a lot in rounds 4 through 7, and I'll highlight some of them as we go along here. But I really think that obviously the most important picks of the draft are how you use those valuable first-round draft picks, those second-round draft picks, and even third-round draft picks. So that's really what I'm looking at, and I'm really looking at teams that were able to fill such huge holes that have been there for years, are really important positions of need for certain teams, and that's really what I'm going to be looking at. So I'm going to start off with the Philadelphia Eagles, who I gave an A-, like I said, and it's mainly because they fixed the biggest need on their roster, which was wide receiver 1. We haven't had a legitimate wide receiver 1 in such a long time on this roster, and I think Devonta Smith is the perfect pick. I can't believe that they actually moved up above the New York Giants and got the guy that we needed to take. It was just unbelievable. That alone is an A+++. And even if I think that the rest of the draft is a B-, C+, I think that still brings us to an A- due to how important it is to nail that first pick. And I personally love Landon Dickerson. I think the Landon Dickerson pick is fantastic. Just for all the reasons I laid out on our live draft show, 25 straight starts. So it's not like he is this guy who can't play a full season. He played 2 full seasons in a row and then got hurt. And it was basically not an injury that would have kept him out very long. He was doing cartwheels a month later They put him in for a snap in the national championship a couple weeks later. I think that if it happened in the regular season, in the beginning of the regular season, he would have come back in the playoffs. So it was not a very serious injury at the end of this year, at least. He has had serious injuries in the past. And I'm not a doctor. He could have really bad medicals, and the Eagles could be completely wrong to take him. But I'm having faith that his medicals will be all right. And if they are, there are no doubts about him on the football field. He is unbelievable on the football field, grading out second as a run blocker in his career behind Penei Sewell in this draft class. I think he's an excellent player and a Quentin Nelson level player when healthy. I think he's just excellent. And if he gets a chance this year, I think he'll step up. But I think long-term him as a Kelsey or a Brooks replacement is just fantastic. And then also I like picks like Kenneth Gainwell. And there's a couple other picks later on that I liked from the Eagles, the defensive tackle from USC. There's a couple picks that I really liked. But mainly, the reason that I like this draft class is because of Devonta Smith and for a smaller part, Landon Dickerson. I think they nailed their first two picks. I know people wanted corners, but if they viewed those two guys as the best players on their board, you go and get them. And I liked it a lot. I think it was fantastic, and I think it was an A-, and I think it was a top 5 draft in the NFL. So I was extremely happy with it. If you have any thoughts on my thoughts on the NFL draft or my picks later, please leave them in the comments, and I will pull them up on the screen and use them as an example. And we will move on to my next favorite draft class, also an A- for the Buffalo Bills. The Bills literally got my number 1 and number 4 defensive end in this draft class at number 30 and number 62 with Gregory Rousseau and Carlos Boogie Basham Jr. Their defensive line is very old, especially on the outside at the end. They watched the Super Bowl. They saw how Tampa Bay got after Mahomes, and that's what you have to do to beat the Chiefs. They know they need to get after Patty Mahomes if they want to win the AFC. Rousseau is a bit of a lottery ticket. Basham, in my opinion, is a bit of more of a surefire NFL prospect ready to play right away. So I think they got long-term upside and value for this year at the DN position. I love taking 2 picks there to make sure that you get someone for this year and for long-term. And I think that they can play together for years to come on both sides in the future. Moving on to a pick, another team that I gave an A- to, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are a winner here solely because of their first 2 picks, similar to the Eagles. Their biggest needs were O-line and cornerback. They stayed at their team, let the draft play out in front of them, and got Rashawn Slater, who I really thought was in play for each team 8 through 12. I had him 12 overall, so it's not some amazing world-beating pick, but I think the need makes it a great pick for the Chargers. They got the best guy available on the board at that time at a position that they needed. They came back and then got Asante Samuel Jr. at 47, who, despite the size, is a steal there and will be a slot corner that can step in right away, in my opinion. Neither are world-shifting picks, but both were the best available players at positions the team needed, and they are setting themselves up well for a big breakout year that I'm sure many will be predicting. So I gave the LA Chargers an A-, and then this leaves me with my 2 favorite draft classes, and they both get A+. The Chicago Bears, not a team that usually gets praised for their drafting, but they come in second place here for me. The Bears are here mainly because of their top pick, but there are other reasons I like this class. Tevin Jenkins is a great move at 39. I had him ranked 40, but many expected him to go first round. That's a long-term left tackle who is absolutely going to slot right in for Chicago for the future and for right now. And I also absolutely love Khalil Herbert, running back from Virginia Tech, and Daz Newsome, wide receiver from UNC. I think they were both underlooked. Khalil Herbert was underlooked due to some other running backs in the ACC, and Daz Newsome was underlooked due to Diami Brown playing on the same team at UNC. I think they were both fantastic 6th-round picks who will both make the team, and they are guys I had as fringe 3rd and 4th rounders. But the reason that they're here is because Justin Fields is their guy that they moved up for at 11. I think he should start over Andy Dalton day 1. And if they got their future and present starting quarterback in Justin Fields, it cannot be emphasized how huge this would be for the franchise of the Chicago Bears and how badly Nagy and Pace need this. The Bears have not had a legitimate franchise QB since Sid Luckman way back in the 60s. This pick alone could save Nagy and Ryan Pace's jobs and make up for the Mitchell Trubisky debacle. So I think getting Justin Fields was such a smart move for the Chicago Bears organization and such an important move for Matt Nagy and Brian Pace and the Chicago Bears fan base. So moving on to my favorite draft of the entire 21 draft, I had the Minnesota Vikings, and I always end up absolutely loving Minnesota's draft. They let the draft play out. They trade back a lot. They get value that comes to them. And starting with moving back from 14 to 23 to take Christian Darrisaw, who I had mocked them at 14, and I had him at 13 overall. So I think that's a tremendous pick and trade value-wise, picking up 2 third-rounders. So they had 4 third-round picks this year with the first one. They took Kellen Mond, who's not a guy I love, but he was still my number 6 overall quarterback, and I love the fit here. I think the pick makes perfect sense for if Kirk struggles. He can play this year. Kellen Mond, he is a 3-year starter. And I also think he's an interesting guy for a soon-to-be rebuilding team in Minnesota. Now, Chaz Surratt is a guy who I had in my top 45, who they got at 78. So that's a pick I absolutely love. Wyatt Davis, another top 50 guy who they got at 86, another pick that I really love. Patrick Jones is another second-round grade that I gave out, who they got at 90 overall. And they also got a wide receiver in Amir Smith-Marset that I like a lot as a late-round dart throw for the Minnesota Vikings. I think that they nailed this draft A++ for the Minnesota Vikings, who nailed last year's draft and the year before. So I think it's a trend for the Minnesota Vikings. They're just a fantastic drafting organization. So getting to my 5 least favorite draft, the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to start with 5 and go to my least favorite. Same reason here. The Carolina Panthers, I think they should have went with Justin Fields. I think J.C. Horn was a hell of a reach. They should have went with Fields, Surtain, or Slater, in my opinion, as well above Horn. The only reason this isn't they're not higher on this list is because I absolutely love wide receiver Terrace Marshall Jr. out of LSU. I also really like the value they got in the Tommy Tremble and Chuba Hubbard picks in the 3rd and 4th rounds. So I like what Carolina did in the middle rounds. I just hated the J.C. Horn pick. So getting to the number 4 on my least favorite draft board list, the Washington football team. I think Jamin Davis was a massive reach, but the main reason they're this low is due to not doing what Chicago did, just like Carolina. They could have offered the same thing Chicago offered to New York, and they would have done it because the pick was higher than Chicago's. They should have went and got their franchise quarterback, went and got Justin Fields. That would have been the move for Washington football team that would have gotten them a much better grade and would have helped them much more going forward. In my opinion, I think that defense is already fine. You got to find that franchise quarterback. I know Ryan Fitzpatrick is a stopgap guy. You just signed Taylor Heineke, but Justin Fields would have locked that position down. So moving on to the next team here on my list at number 2, I have the Las Vegas Raiders, who I gave, I think, this would be number 3. So I gave them a D minus maybe. Before I hate on their draft, let me just say that I absolutely love Trevon Moehrig. I had him 16 overall, so I think that they got a fantastic player there. But they reached like crazy on Alex Leatherwood, offensive tackle out of Alabama, at number 17 overall. Malcolm Kuntz and Divine Diablo are guys that I mock to myself a lot of times in Eagles situations, and they're fine picks. But they're day 3 guys, in my opinion. I mainly just hate how they use their top value picks, their first-round picks, and they've had plenty with very little success here for the Las Vegas Raiders. So let's move on to a team that I gave a D minus to with the Indianapolis Colts. I thought the Colts had a really puzzlingly bad draft from a GM who I respect in Chris Beard. Kwity Paye is a guy I had at 25 overall, and they took him at 21. So it's not it's not the worst pick of all time. It's not Jalen Reagor from last year even. But there were basically all of the edge rushers still on the board above him. So I just don't like the pick. And then you look at Deo Udeyengbo. I don't know if that's how you say it, but he isn't a guy that I was huge on coming out of Vandy, and he's also got huge Achilles issues, and he just had it happen in January. I don't know why they drafted 2 DNs the year after trading their first-round pick last year to give to Forrest Buckner an $80 million contract to play defensive tackle. That seems like mismanagement of resources to me. I also don't know who Kylan Grassom is, who they took in the 4th round. I kind of like Sam Ehlinger and the value they got in the 6th round. He's probably not supposed to play, though, and that's an okay pick. It's not enough to change my opinion. Could be a solid backup for Wentz down the line. And getting to my least favorite draft of the 2021 draft. And let me just say, there's usually drafts that I hate way more than the drafts I just listed. Like, the Raiders got Moehrig, who I like. The Colts got Paye, who's not the worst of all time. Like, it's not a complete catastrophe. It's just not a guy that excites me. Washington got Samuel Cosmi, a solid offensive tackle. But You look at my least favorite draft, and they didn't get a single guy in my top 70. They get an F, the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans did not get a single top 70 guy on my list. Ian Book is a guy I obviously selfishly love as a Notre Dame fan, but I thought he was like a 6th or a 7th rounder, and they took him in the 4th. I guess Sean Payton sees something. Maybe that makes me happy as a Notre Dame fan, but Peyton Turner in the 1st round at 28 out of Houston was just a wild, wild pick. And then you look at their 3rd rounder, Paulson Adebo is probably the best player they got, and he was their 3rd round pick at 76 and their 3rd pick overall. So I think the Saints they had a bad draft this year, and I think that they take a big step back coming forward this year. So that was my top 5 favorite and least favorite NFL drafts. If you have any thoughts on them, leave them in the comments, and I will get now to my picks. Joe Ciccoletti, absolutely love to hear that, being a Falcon fan. The Saints. Yeah, the Falcons didn't make my list because they didn't do anything that excited me too much on day 2 or 3. But Kyle Pitts alone, it's like Trevor Lawrence and Kyle Pitts. I didn't even put the Falcons and Jags on here because I kind of assumed that those guys were on here. So I wanted to talk about things that I hadn't assumed before the draft. But the Falcons are absolutely a winner, coming away with a solid B or a B+ in my opinion with Kyle Pitts, Joe. So let's get to my picks, and let's talk a little bit about March and April on the Tough Coverage Podcast. In March, I went 65 and 57 at plus 18.5 units, and then in April, I went 67 and 56 at plus 6 units. So that puts us going into May at 132 and 114 at plus 24.5 units after 2 months. That is exactly where we want to be. We are chugging along, guys. That's absolutely excellent. So let's look at our record so far in May, and I believe it is 5-2 so far. We are 5-2. I will calculate the units later, but 5-2 so far in May, and that is absolutely where we want to be. So let's look at the units, right? 1.5, 2.5, 5. So we are up 3.5 units so far in May with a 5-2 record. So let's keep it going. And we have a loaded card for you guys. I have 7 picks tonight. So let's get into it. At 640, I like the Chicago White Sox money line at the Cincinnati Reds for 1 unit. The White Sox have had really bad luck so far this year. I made them my World Series pick. That's probably why. And since then, they have lost Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert. And they have missed time from others, but they're still sitting at 15-12 and would currently be in the wild card game. So I think they could still push to the playoffs. And one of those bright spots that's been pushing them to that record is their starting pitching, and part of that is starting pitcher Dylan Cease, who has surprised many with a sub-3 ERA at 2.96. The White Sox have won Dylan Cease's last 2 starts, and the last game he pitched was a 7-inning, 3-hit, 0-walk, 80-pitch shutout outing. It was absolutely excellent. The White Sox batters bat .292 against Jeff Hoffman, who is the pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds tonight, in 28 plate appearances. So they do have past success against the Reds starting pitcher. I like the White Sox to win and keep the Reds low scoring, and that leads us to our next pick, which is also in the same game, the Cincinnati Reds under 4.5 versus the Chicago White Sox, also for 1 unit. The White Sox opponent would have cashed this under in 4 of the last 5 and 6 of the last 8 games. The White Sox have kept their opponents under 4.5 runs. The Reds' offensive numbers have been surprisingly good, but they still have went under 4.5 in 2 of the last 4 and 5 of the last 9. The Reds' roster has just 1 hit in 14 plate appearances against Dylan Cease. I expect this to be low scoring, and just in case the White Sox lineup doesn't show up at all, I decided to put 1 unit on each money line and team total under instead of just 2 units on the White Sox money line. So we move on to where on my shirt, on my hat, at 7:05, the Philadelphia Phillies money line versus the Milwaukee Brewers for 1.5 units. I don't have a ton of rational reasoning here, but I'll try to be unbiased. The Phillies are 4-2 in Aaron Nola's starts so far this year, and 2-1 in the last 3. Aaron Nola has had 3 straight quality starts. The Brewers last night made Vinny Velasquez look like just an absolute stud, which he hasn't looked like in a very long time. And the Phillies also beat the Brewers up in the first 2 innings with a brutal lineup. I expect Reese and Kutch to be back in the lineup today. I'm confident with Nola on the mound. We are 9-6 at home as opposed to 5-9 on the road. The Phillies batters bat .450 against Eric Lauer, which makes perfect sense because we rate lefties, and Reese and Kutch have had plenty of success. But most importantly in this matchup, I'm going to the game tonight just like I was there last night for a win, and I'm bringing my girlfriend who has been to about 6 or 7 Phillies games and at least about 20 or so Sixers games with me over the last few years and has never seen a loss at a Philadelphia sporting event. It's absolutely insane. She's legitimately probably 30+-0. I hope tonight's Milwaukee Brewers are not the Brock Lesnar to her Undertaker streak. I thought for sure last night that Vinny V would end that streak, but she is still undefeated, and we are going to try to keep that streak going tonight. It is legitimately insane, and I like our odds as we are favored with Aaron Nola on the mound coming off of an unlikely win from last night. So let's move on to the basketball, to the hardwood. At 7:30, I like the Milwaukee Bucks money line versus the Brooklyn Nets for 2 units. I've been saying that I like this matchup for months. Everyone who's been listening to me has heard me say that the 1 seed will win the Eastern Conference. I've been saying ad nauseum. I've been saying this. I've repeatedly been bullish on the Sixers needing the 1 seed because they match up well with the Bucks, but not the Nets, while the Bucks match up well with the Nets, but not the Sixers, and the Nets match up well with the Sixers, but not the Bucks. And Drew absolutely shut Kyrie down, making me look like a genius last game, going 2 for 8 from deep with no room to breathe and also with 5 turnovers. KD shot 7 for 13 from 3, which is a bit of an anomaly. He does not usually shoot that much at all, especially from distance, and had 42 points, and they still lost. Giannis had 49, 8, and 4 with 2 steals and 3 blocks with only 1 turnover on 21 for 36 shooting and 4 for 8 from 3. And I think that is low-key one of the best and most efficient performances of the year. I think Giannis is being tremendously underrated and tremendously undersold as an MVP and Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And I think it's just because people don't want to give him a 3rd straight MVP or a 2nd straight Defensive Player of the Year. But I don't know what he could do to shut people up about that. He can't win a title in April. So I think the disrespect for Giannis has gone a bit too far. And you look at the last game that they played 2 days ago, the Bucks averaged 21 free throws per game. And last game, they only got to the foul line 12 times. So I expect them to get to the line more tonight. I think Milwaukee's threesome is perfectly comprised to give Kyrie, Harden, and KD's big 3 problems, specifically on the defensive end. And Harden isn't even in the game tonight. Milwaukee is 21-10 at home, and this game is huge for them, and this would bring them 1.5 games behind the Nets for the 2 seed with the tiebreaker with an easier remaining schedule. They could get the 2 seed, and the Nets would be the 3 if they're able to pull away and win tonight. I love the Bucks to win tonight, and of course, that very much helps our Philadelphia 76ers get that 1 seed as well. So let's move back to the diamond and talk a little baseball. At 7:45, I like the New York Mets over 3.5 runs for 1.5 units. That is 3 straight games the Mets would have went over this total by at least 1.5 runs. The Cardinals' opponent would have went over this total in 2 of the last 3 days. And in the 2 games that Johan Oviedo has started for the St. Louis Cardinals, their opponent has scored 9 and 5 runs. I think this is an overreaction to Jacob deGrom getting no run support. I think that they go over this 3.5 runs total easily. I actually am getting a bit more confident as I'm sitting here talking about it. I might put a little more scratch on it than 1.5 units. But for now, it's a 1.5 unit play. And for another 1.5 unit play, we're moving back to the hard court, the hardwood. I think hard court is more of a tennis term. Moving back to the hardwood at 8 o'clock, the Dallas Mavericks plus 3.5 at the Miami Heat for 1.5 units. The Mavs are in a heated race with the Lakers and the Blazers to escape the play-in tournament. They won 3 in a row before losing, and this is a clear bounce-back spot for the Dallas Mavericks. The Heat have won 3 in a row, and this is a big-time letdown spot, in my opinion. The Heat are also playing to be left out of the play-in, but have a much easier route than the Mavs. I just think this game is bigger for the Mavs, and maybe that's flawed logic, but I think the Mavs are the better team here also, so I don't think it's all that flawed. And then, getting to my last pick, and my best bet of the night at 9:40, I like the Oakland Athletics, the A's versus the Blue Jays for 3 units. I'm playing a little money ball tonight. I rode with the Jays yesterday, and it let me down, so today I'm switching sides on them and riding with the A's. I was irrationally high on Steven Matz yesterday, even though I love what the A's have done, especially offensively, and with 4+ runs in each of the last 3 games. going against a relative unknown in Anthony Kay tonight, who has a 10.8 ERA for the Blue Jays, and I'm sure we'll see a ton of the Toronto bullpen, which just isn't any good. You look at the other side with Oakland. Cole Irvin, to the dismay of us Phillies fans, has been pretty good. With 2 of his last 3 starts have been quality starts for Cole Irvin, and the one that wasn't was 0.2 innings short of being one. It had the other qualifications, and he has had 12 strikeouts in his last 17.1 innings pitched, which is a really solid K per 9. It doesn't seem like it's that fake. Cole Irvin seems to be the real deal so far in Oakland. I love the A's tonight as my best bet. Hammer the A's, and that's going to do it, folks. I got to get out of here and get going to the Phillies game. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of the Tough Cover Click. You can follow the Tough Cover Podcast at Tough Cover Pod, and you can follow me at Mark Henry Jr. _ on Twitter. You can follow the Painted Lines at the Painted Lines on Twitter, and you can subscribe to the Painted Lines on YouTube and Twitch or wherever you are watching this. So, folks, enjoy the winners.